First up is Shane, and yeah, it's looking pretty good. It's a decent similarity to this character, um, and let's just kind of go through it piece by piece. So, um, pretty similar proportions. I think some of the tools shown in this next module will help you get closer. I think that I think you're going to want to break the hands down into more shapes. Like I'd rather see, even if you're just using like a series of cubes for the different finger segments, I think that will look better than just these big toruses here to try and match that. Um, there's a seam here, so you could kind of, well, it looks like you've got a couple cylinders there, but I think you could have like another small one here with a seam there, for example. I could, oh, are those combined? I'm wondering why that's moving the other one. Yeah, don't combine stuff like that. That's not a good idea. Um, so, yeah, I could kind of take this here and duplicate and, move this up. So kind of have that little gap there like this. Maybe get a little closer. And then, this gets much more narrow here. So I think, it's good that you have a separate piece there. I don't know why you've combined all this stuff. I don't recommend doing that. So yeah, so that could be smaller. And then there's a separate piece, that smaller piece underneath in there. And you've got a sphere for this, which is, I think it's a slightly different shape from a sphere, although, it might be hard to make from a primitive. But I might, for this part here, in between, looks like you've got something there already. But, oh, you've got like an elongated sphere. I kind of think I might do a cylinder for that. But just one that's like pointed the other direction. So like, I'm going to hold down E and click the left mouse button and go to discrete rotate so I can go in. Ooh, okay, that's doing that because it's parented to something that's scaled. So I'm just going to unparent that, Shift P, and now it won't do that. Oh, that's not so great. Well, I'll just, anyway, let's duplicate that. I'll turn off discrete rotate because that's not going to be what I want. Well, let's just eyeball it here. Yeah, I think there's a little bit more of a gap here too. Anyway, so I'm not going to just model the whole thing, but I guess my point is like really, look at each piece as an individual surface. Like this is a piece, that is a piece, this is a piece, this is a piece, that is a piece, that is a piece, that is a piece, that little thing there is a piece, etc., 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 and really go through the whole thing. Looks like you have most of them here. I think I might break this down a little bit differently. So yeah, get into some more detail with these pieces, and then you'll be doing some beveling, but that'll be demonstrated in the next module, so you can add that then. Next up is Amber, and yeah, it looks like you followed the tutorial well and got the the basic shapes in here, and they look pretty well lined up. I would tend to think that the head was maybe a little thicker than this. Again, you don't have that reference, so it's all just guessing, right? Educated guesses. And also the feet, again, that's hard to do because the angle, but I would also tend to make those a bit thicker. Maybe something like that. But overall, I mean, there's not too much to critique because you pretty closely followed the tutorial, which is good. Maybe, when I look at the distance from the front of the foot to here, and then I look at this distance from here to here, I can see that it's probably both a combination of two things. One, the legs are probably a little narrower this direction, and two, this is probably wider that direction. Oops, let's center the pivot there. Modify. Center pivot. And scale that out. And then I'm going to hold down D and Shift. And just, whoops. Didn't mean to do that. Undo D, Shift. There we go. And then scale that up thicker a little bit. So it's exactly at the bottom there. Maybe something a little closer to that. But yeah, overall, this is good. You've got, got the basics in there. Seems like you're getting the hang of it. Next up is Joshua Dobkins. And yeah, it's a pretty decent likeness. You'll be seeing beveling in the next module, which I think will help with the kind of round pill-shaped things with both the shoes and the legs. You've got this kind of big gap here where you've got this whole cube there, and I'm not really seeing that here. It's more like these guys are kind of maybe overlapping or pressed up against each other more. So I might take out those things. You've got the big circle here. I think this thing needs some more of that detail, and hopefully we'll get some tips, like I said, in the next module for that. I think these are much thinner. See if you still have the history on one of these. Yeah, this one you do. So right in here you can do thickness and middle mouse drag and get that a lot thinner to be more like, how you look at that's almost paper thin there. And then if you wanted to kind of open it up, what you could do is, whoops, sorry, grab like these faces, something like that. Maybe 2 rows, but let's see how one works. And then the only problem is then you've got this hole here. So I'm going to select the edge, just right mouse click, edge, and then double click to get that edge, and then hold down Shift, right mouse click, and then go to fill hole, and that'll fill that in. And then I'll repeat that for here, right mouse click, edge, double click on this edge, Shift, right mouse click, fill hole. And there you've got the, so that's a little bit more looking like that thing. And also, maybe sort of like a rounder shape for this would be better, and some of the details on the front panel. But this is some good work. This is sort of a more complex thing that you've done here, so it looks like you're getting into some more advanced things. You'll notice it does, yours does kind of get narrow as it goes to the top, but this one seems to really sort of curve in more, so that would be good if you curve it. And you've even got these things, so good attention to detail. Definitely things to work on, but it's coming along. This is Ekaterina. Hope I'm pronouncing that okay. And yeah, this looks good. A lot of little parts on this. I think might have dealt with some of the parts differently. It's a little bit hard to tell from this point of view, but I would guess that these surfaces here are cylinders rather than spheres with like rounded edges. So if you had a cylinder in there, I'm just going to hold down E and the left mouse button and go to discrete rotate to rotate that exactly to the side, and just snap that to the middle here. Oops, doesn't want to. And then I was just holding a middle mouse drag and V for point snap to snap it there. So that to me looks like more like something like that. And we're going to go over the beveling soon, but I'll just show you anyways, just because I keep referring to it. Shift right mouse click. Where's bevel? Right here. And then adjust the fraction and the segments. And, so that's kind of what I imagine being there. And then I imagine that this piece and that piece are not cylinders, but sort of elongated cubes. But it's pretty hard to tell from the drawing. And I think that I think what's weird is I think the way this is squashed flat from the side. Again, we don't have a side view, so it's anybody's guess. But I sort of imagine this to be thicker. And yeah, the shoes are a little clunky, but I think again you could probably bevel this front edge. It's going to let me do that. Yeah. Cool. To get that, and so on and so forth. So so maybe you wouldn't want this bottom part, but rather have this sort of reach the ground there. It's good that you did some separate pieces for the hand, and yeah, maybe just to kind of break up the shapes, like have a shape here and a shape there, just to break that up a little bit more. Maybe do a little something for the mouth. I think there's a thing on the next module where it demonstrates the little sort of meter on the front of his body that you could use the same process for the mouth. It's basically half of a, it's like deleting part of a cylinder. And then maybe you want to get in some more of these shapes on the head. But yeah, I mean, it's coming along, and it's sort of bearing a similarity there. I think you need to do something with the torso, because it just looks like there's too many kind of weird pieces here. Again, I think these are cylinders, but you have spheres here, so I put a cylinder there. And then I think you need one kind of main shape for the body rather than that and that and that. It looks a little crazy with all those different pieces there, so try to come up with a main. Maybe it's just a cylinder where you've kind of flattened a little bit from the side and then beveled the edges or something. So so yeah, keep going. Next up is Natalie, and yeah, this is coming along. I think that this right here is sort of squashed a little bit, and it's also narrower and not quite aligned right with this arm here. But you'll notice here it's actually, this part is going to be narrower than the sort of circle things on top and bottom. So I would get that aligned and scale that in some to make it narrower. And then same with this, so this is narrower, and this is narrower. I'll just move that here. Maybe it needs to be longer too, to kind of intersect there more. Okay, it's starting to look a little bit better, I think. This, I think you need like another, there's another round shape at the end of the arm there, so just another cylinder like one of those there. And this in between thing again can be narrower. So yeah, there'll be a lot more once you start beveling. I think this is looking a little flat. I might kind of round that out a little bit. I think I demonstrate how to do that in the next module as well, so you can just follow along with that. But yeah, overall this is coming along well. Next up is Joanna, and yeah, really cute choice of design here. So for, you did individual spheres there. Yeah, I might have done like a cylinder where I scaled in every other row of edges, which you'll see in the next one. You might want to try that. But either way, I imagine this is not so elongated like this. I imagine it's as wide from the front as it is from the side, meaning that these are actually all circles, which would be something like this and something more like that is what I suspect, and that would go for this and this and this as well. These as well. Probably use the numeric adjustment in the channel box rather than eyeballing it for something like this. Yeah, just make these the same. Maybe they can be like 0.37, both of them. And then maybe do that for the rest of these. You can do them all at once. Maybe the Z, X need to be the same, 0.35, 0.35. And so those are all circles again. The other thing is, I was looking at this coil, and there's actually a pretty easy way to do that. I'll quickly show you that. It's a little bit, beyond what we've done so far, but since you've got it in there, there is a primitive called a helix, and I will rotate that to the side. I have discrete rotate on, by the way. Hold down E and the left mouse button. You can turn that on and off from here. So I'll rotate that to its side, and let's just frame that, and then I'll make some adjustments here. I might increase the subdivision's axis to make that a little more round, going around there, and let's adjust the height, and the radius is going to be smaller. You can hold down the control key when you're middle mouse dragging here. Just click on the word, then I middle mouse drag on the scene. You hold down the control key and you get a lot more control there. And you can see that we definitely need more coils. I think the radius is still too big. Oh, not the radius. The was it the width? I think, yeah. You could actually count the number of coils if you want. Okay, let's do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Call it 12. So something like that. And then to bend it, there's a nice tool for that too. So I'm going to do under the modeling section here, you've got deform and nonlinear, and then bend. And first of all, this bend is oriented vertically. It needs to be horizontally, like the like that coil. And then now that I've done that, if I click on bend here, I can adjust curvature like so. And that would be a great way to build this thing. I guess I made it a little too big, but obviously you can adjust. Maybe I'll go back and adjust the height a little bit, get it tighter like it is in there. So that's pretty close, and then I would just say, just to get rid of all that stuff, edit, delete by type history, and that'll get rid of that bend. And then I can move it down here and maybe get rid of these guys. So I know I didn't go over that, but I just thought that would be nice now for you to see, since you've got exactly that on your character. Yeah, actually, oh yeah, so you've got this. So I see the arms as being the same as this. So it says, oh, you've done a helix for that. Okay. So, I mean, if that's how you're going to do the neck, you could potentially do the arms the same way rather than having all these individual little surfaces. And you've got a lot of nice detail here. I see these as not circles sticking far out. I see them as more kind of flat, just because of the way the light's hitting there so evenly. I imagine that's kind of flat and not like a big rounded thing sticking out like that one. So I might just do like a cube in there and then bevel it, which will be demonstrated in the next module. And then kind of same for these. I wouldn't have them sticking out so far. But yeah, it's looking really good. And it's it's a really cute character design. Next up is Francis, and I can see this image here, but this file, which should be a my file, I can't open it. It just should be like .ma, and it just says 1.1. It doesn't have the file type. So I tried .ma, and I tried zip, and those didn't work. So From this, it's looking pretty good. The feet may be a bit long, but it looks like you've got the basics lined up and block out. So I could do a more thorough critique if you turn in the Maya file, but it looks like you have the basics in there pretty well. Next up is Elena, and again, I'd like to get the Maya file to thoroughly check it, but from what I can see here, you've got all the basics in, so that's good. But yeah, there's not much more I can critique without opening the Maya file, but it looks like you're getting the hang of it. Head's looking maybe a little thin from the side. You maybe go a little thicker on that. Otherwise, it looks pretty good. Next up is Mary, and once again, you need to upload the Maya scene file that's in the instructions. You should always check the assignment submission instructions to tell you what kind of files to upload. But yeah, this looks really way off from the module. So I would tend to say if you're a beginner, you should just follow the tutorial using the provided robot image, so you can just follow along step by step. But if you're going to do something different, it should be as good or better than that. And this doesn't look like a toy robot at all to me. This just looks like a few spheres and cylinders. It doesn't look like anything coming together. So I would start over, use the provided image, follow the tutorial step by step, and make sure you upload your Maya scene file. Next up is Candace, and yeah, this looks really good. It looks like you took it well beyond the the requirements of the assignment, which is nice to see. And yeah, some good solutions to different areas here. One thing you'll notice is I guess those maybe do get thicker. Oh, that's interesting. You used the helix for that. That's pretty sensible, actually. One thing that this has is you can increase the subdivisions, not the caps, along the axis to kind of make that look a little bit more rounded. So you might like that. And when you see this faceted thing, so for example here, you're seeing that kind of faceted thing going on. If you go shift right mouse click and soften harden edges, soften edge, that should change that. Why is it not? Yeah, I'm not sure why it's not doing that. Let's see if it works for this one. I'm going to right mouse click and select the edges just from the side because we don't want those in it. And let's try softening those. Not sure what it is about these surfaces that are making it so that they're not showing up more smooth looking. That faceted thing, normally it's that soften hardened edge thing. Can try mesh display set to face, and then mesh display soften edge. No. A little stumped on there. One thing with this bevel is if you click on the bevel, after you select that, you've got it. So you've got a lot of extra edges in here that might end up getting in your way. But yeah. Anyways, I'm adjusting that fraction, and then I can do the number of segments to kind of round it more. Oh, doesn't like that. Let's see if it comes back. Oh, that acted kind of crazy. Well, I think that the problem is we're sort of frozen still. So Maya froze up on me there, so I just quit and restarted it. But yeah, there's a lot of good detail in here. You'll see kind of another approach to that. I think you can get it more rounded on top. I like these actually. I think that's a little different from how I did it, although they should probably be smooth. You can do that by hitting 3, selecting and hitting 3. And you want to add the bevel to many or most of these surfaces that don't have it currently. And maybe adjust the shoes as well. So right now this is looking pretty good. It's definitely going beyond the scope of the required assignment so far. but you'll be able to refine it further in the next module when you add your bevels and so forth. Okay, this is Ariana, and yeah, it looks like you went beyond the assignment, which is good. You got some additional detail in there. You might want to build this as like separate little loops, or I think someone did it as a helix, which could work as well. Looks like you've sort of added some paper thin surfaces here on both sides, and I would probably recommend against that. I guess what you're trying to do is that a kind of ridge on there, but I would definitely, if you're going to do that, then just make sure it has some thickness. So yeah, this came together well, and yeah, for the next module you can go through and round these edges. I think for these, if you're going to put those in, don't do the like a paper thin thing. Use it as a cylinder, but just narrow, like scale it down pretty narrow. Next up is Lindsay, and yeah, this is good. It looks like you sort of went beyond here. It looks like you maybe used smooth. Yeah, I can see here you use smooth to do this, and that's not necessarily wrong, but it's just an extremely dense way to build that surface, where you could, and I'll show in the next module, instead use bevel. I'm going to see if it lets me delete this. I'm going to click on that polysmooth face and hit select, and then hit delete, and yeah, there we go. So and I would and see you've split the faces here as well, so let's take out this as well, if it'll let us. Yeah, there's a few of those. So yeah, I've got some tweaks in there as well that I might need to take out. So I'm just deleting out these nodes, just to get it back to like a regular cube, and then I might just delete history off of it, and then I'll do a shift right mouse click, does it want me to, actually it wants me to select, I'm going to right mouse click and choose edge, and then select these edges, and then do shift right mouse click, bevel edge, and then adjust the fraction here, holding down control to get a finer adjustment, and adjust the segments. And what you end up with is, essentially the same look as you had, but you can see that it's much less geometry to get the same surface. So it's just sort of a more efficient way, of building that. Yeah, and the arms are looking good. I think I might have gone for a somewhat more sharp look for this. It looks like you did a smooth on that as well. And again, I might use just bevel on the edges just to get more control over that. It's nice that you've added these, but again, yeah, look how dense that is. I mean, it's made for a big file and one that could be much smaller. So and then of course you want to bevel this one, and then we'll look at the feet, but the sides of the feet are, you have it the whole thing rounded, but the sides should be flat, and we'll look at how to do that by again using bevel in the next module. What did you start out with here? Oh, it just is called like shape. Okay. I'm guessing it's just a, is it a cube that's been smoothed and then split? Okay. So, but yeah, it's nice to see that you've kind of jumped ahead and did some additional stuff. I like the kind of extra detail on these bolts, and this is looking good. But again, I think the thing for you to focus on is how can you build these objects without making them so dense. And yeah, so maybe go back, well, yeah, and so maybe go back over these in the next module and redo some of these shapes, but without them having to be so dense, by using bevel instead of smooth. Okay, next up is summer, and yeah, this is looking good. It's pretty similar to the other one, but unique. Actually, it almost looks like it has exactly the same arms. That's kind of interesting. Um, One thing I would say is that for these, I wouldn't tend to do an elongated um, cylinder here. I would tend to keep that round. Make it the same width and height. So maybe make it all like 0.6 or something. Which means then, just to make that work, you'd probably end up having to scale this in and get that centered, which I think would be all right. Because with the idea that it would rotate around that, that the leg would bend there, you'd want that to be round rather than elongated, like you had it. I think there's some additional details to add. I think, this may actually be decals on the model, but maybe you want to model it in. And it looks like this is kind of indented here. So, what is this? Oh, you just put a cube there. So what I would tend to do for this is take this surface, select right mouse click, select this face, and first do extrude face, and then click here, and then scale that in, and take some time to adjust it to match this square first, and then I'll extrude again, and then I'm going to push it back, because to me it looks like there's kind of this, it's kind of goes back inside the guy there. Then I would split this in half. So to do that, so to split it in half, I might just isolate this one. Let's select this. And this is the isolate select button, so we can just look at this one, and I'll use the multi-cut tool for that. Where's that? Edit mesh, multi-cut. I usually use the hotkey Control Shift X. Yeah, right here, multi-cut tool. And if I hold down Shift, you can see it like locks that to the center. So we're at exactly the center. You can see when I click it says 50%. That's because I'm holding Shift, that it puts it at the center there. So that's exactly split in half. Then I would take these two faces and again Shift, right mouse click, extrude face, but I'm going to keep faces together and turn that off. I just drag down that, and then I can have these as sort of separate things. And then I'm going to Shift, right mouse click, extrude face again, and pull these out. And that way I've got those two separate, whatever those are. I don't know. And then maybe you want to do another little, like, some more splits and extrude for these guys and those guys, for example. So I could also, like, again, Control Shift X for the multi-cut tool, and then I'm going to hold down Shift and just slice across here, and maybe slice across there, and then take these guys and whoops, extrude those. Just going to scale that down a bit, and then Shift, right mouse click, extrude face again, and pull those out to get those things, etc. So anyway, just giving you some idea how you might approach that. Turn off isolate select to get the rest of the character back. Yeah, and look for other little details like these bolts here, and like that little ridge would be nice to add. But yeah, it's coming along well. Next up is Yao Nan. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Let me know. Yeah, this is coming across pretty well. I think that one thing with this, I can see you used a helix for that, which is okay, but it gets narrower at the ends. It's kind of bulges out there. You can see it, it gets narrow at either end and then gets thicker in the middle. And so I might go in here first. I might increase the, oh, that's probably not right. The subdivisions, yeah, it should be axis. Not quite sure what's going on here. And then, so let's see, no, we probably need that many coils, but maybe reduce the width, no. Oh yeah. So I've reduced the radius to kind of get a little bit more of that shape, and the only problem with this is they're at a bit of an angle just because of the nature of using a helix on there. But I mean, it kind of gets the idea across. But then I think if you one way, if you were going to use this to get it to go narrow at the ends, I might use a lattice. So for that, I would go to deform lattice, and then right mouse click, whoops, on the lattice, choose lattice points, and I might select those and then scale those down a bit, and then I'm doing a control select to deselect these, and then scale these down a bit more, and then you get that shape, that rounded shape. Works pretty well. Yeah, it looks like you've went beyond the assignment, which is good. I think these worked out well. If you saw before, when someone had like a paper thin version of this, this was more what I was talking about to match the look of it. And I noticed you've also added these guys as well, the little panels on his legs. So yeah, I think this is coming along very well. So this is Andrea Shen. Just make sure I'm recording here. Good. So yeah, I think this is coming along very well. It looks like you followed the tutorial well. Might kind of look at the scale of these things. Guess that's about right. It looks sort of big to me for some reason on here. So that's, yeah, maybe that's sticking out a little bit too far forward. Maybe scale that in a little bit that way. But I think this is, all around pretty good. Looks like you followed it pretty closely, and everything looks aligned nicely. So, and I can see you've also added these individual hinges, which I think is a nice touch. So that's good. And yeah, next one we'll add the beveling, but I think you're definitely coming along well. Next up is Vincent, and I can see you went ahead and started doing some bevels, which is perfectly fine. You even did this piece as well. So yeah, all that's starting to look good. I think you'll want to add a bevel around this edge as well if it lets you. Usually I do those, well, depending on if they're going to be the same size at the same time, like the sides. Is that how you did this, by the way? Yeah, you did. Okay. So it's not letting me select all the way around. I'm wondering why. Usually it would. Usually I can double click on the edge and it would select all the way around, but it's not. So sometimes you have to do this. Select individually. Did I get the whole thing? And then shift right mouse click, bevel edge. Yeah, that's working okay. And then just adjust. I'm holding down the control key so I have finer control over that. So you'll want to go around and do that as well. Get that sort of front edge for here and these buttons and some of the other areas. And yeah, and in the top of the foot to get that rounded and so forth. And then yeah, we'll show how to add the grill and some of these other details. This is looking really narrow to me. I'm imagining it's more sort of square shaped. Again, it's anybody's guess, right? Because you can only tell from since the reference photo we only have the front. But yeah, I think you're going along very well, and you went beyond the assignment, and that's good. Next up is Sharon. And you mentioned in the post that you had difficulties with the select tool and won't let you select edges or faces or vertices individually. So yeah, I mean, there's a few ways of going about it. One is, you should be able to just right mouse click and go to vertex, and then you can, individually select a vertex, or right mouse click, choose a face, and then the other thing is there's the object mode and component mode. So I just right mouse click and set object mode for that individual object to switch me back to object, and then I can do it like that, or I can have it sort of for the whole scene. So I'm in component mode, so anything I click on, I'm in component mode, and I can select vertices here or there. So, and then going back to object mode switches back to object mode. So you can try those buttons there. The other thing is, if select's being weird, is you can double click on the select tool and just hit reset, because sometimes maybe you've done some weird setting. If you hold Q and the left mouse button, there's different sort of selection options here, but I don't imagine any of those are your problem. So it's hard to say exactly why you weren't able to select stuff. I imagine the head to be square, so I would say this would be bigger. I'm going to move this pivot point to the front of the head. I'll hold down D and then shift and pop that to the front, and then that way I can scale it back. And so then it's a square, and then I think you're going to want to move some of these things back, and I would then do this one accordingly as well. I'm putting oh yeah, this is sort of floating here, so make sure you're looking at this from different angles. But again, a D shift to pop it to the front, and then I can make that bigger. And then you're going to want to adjust the position of the arms and this object as well, center that on the top, and so forth. These legs probably should be centered front to back here. Maybe they look a bit thick to me. I might go a little narrower, but maybe like that. So yeah, I think you could play with some of the proportions here to adjust, but otherwise it's coming along well.